Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and in this video what I want to do is talk more about FlexBox. So this is going to be more of a specifically a FlexBox class, and just basically kind of going the ins and outs of how to think about FlexBox. And really, we always want to think about, when you're using like FlexBox and Grid, you want to think about containers. So everything always revolves around having sort of a container div. So let's go switch over to my screen. Here we go, and let's open up a project that uses the DOM. We'll just create a new boilerplate. So I'm going to copy my boilerplate, paste, and if you don't know how, if you want to make your own boilerplate, watch my video about code organization, where I go over how I put together this boilerplate, and I'll just paste that in here. Okay, and we're going to rename this FlexBox practice, or FlexBox Grid, because I'll also use this for Grid afterwards. Cool. So let's see here. Let's go to our index.html. Scroll down. And basically, let's first start off with 3 blocks. 3 divs. And each of these with the class of... Actually, I'll give them IDs. ID 1. And let's just do 2 more. ID 2. ID 3. Save. Okay, then let's go to our CSS. So I'll go to my style.css and go to where all my styles begin. And I'm going to make all 3 of them have the same dimension. So this hashtag 1, hashtag 2, hashtag 3, and this, I just confirm that that's what I did. 1, 2, 3. Yep, I now are all IDs, and they're all going to have a height of 200, and they're all going to have a width of 200 pixels. So let me just make this pixels as well. Cool. Save. And then I'm going to give each one a separate color. So 1 will have a background color of red. I'll just copy this over. So 2 will be blue. And 3 will be green. Okay, and now let's take a look at what the website looks like. So let's open this up with Live Server, which is an extension you can add to VS Code. And just give it a moment to open it up. And there we go. So we have 3 blocks: red, blue, and green. And this is sort of the natural behavior of how the browser is going to handle block elements. It takes the block elements, left aligns them, and basically stacks them on top of each other. Okay, so what FlexBox does is that it's going to allow us to put these blocks in a bigger block, and that bigger block is going to treat them differently than just stacking them on top of each other. So what we need to do is go back to our index.html and create sort of a container of sorts. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use, well, to keep it simple, I'll just use another div. Okay, and this div will have a ID of container. It's our container div. Okay, although I should probably give it carrots. There we go. Let me get the closing div. There we go. Let's save that, let it format. There we go. So again, so basically we have our 3 blocks now in a bigger block. Let's see, has anything changed? No, because I need to apply a certain style. So now I need to go grab that container block. So I'll do that right above all my individual blocks. Doesn't really matter, but and there's actually an ID container. So I'm going to take my container block, and what I'm going to do is change its display property. And you can change this from block, inline, but in this case we're changing it to flex. That means this box, anything inside of it is being treated. This is a FlexBox container, and it's going to treat the blocks inside of it differently. Cool. So then now when I go here, let's watch what happens. See, now they're in a row. Okay, I still would like them to be spaced a little bit differently. I don't want them all the way over here on the left. I'd like them, let's say I want to center it. So I can say justify content. This only works with Flexbox, so it has to be a Flexbox container. Justify content. Okay, let's see here. Let's say if we want to center these squares. So I'll center the squares, save, and now they're centered. Nice. But what if I really want this red block all the way over here to the side, this green block all the way over here to the side, and this blue box kind of perfectly centered between them? Then I would do space between. So that way it's space between the blocks, but not space around the blocks. I'll show you the difference. Space around. No, space between. And see, what it does, it pushes the two last ones to the edge, but make sure that there's equal space between all the blocks within that. Now, if I also want some cushion on this side and on this side, then I would do space around. Okay. And see, now we got the space here on the edges. So that's really useful. That's one really useful aspect of Flexbox, that you can quickly position things. And then if I want to position it vertically, then I would just use align content. And then it's the same properties: center, just space around, space between. Since this currently it's not a fixed height, it won't really do much for me. But let's say I had a block with a fixed height and width, I could do that. Now let's say I want to stack these as columns again. I just like having the Flexbox tools. Like oftentimes my column content will also be in a Flexbox, because I really like using justify content and align items to get my alignment perfect. And let's see here. So then in that case, you would just do flex direction column. And this would now stack them again in a column. But now I can then use, instead use align content to do center, to center it on the screen. Okay, let's take a look here. Control Shift I. Let's take a look at the size of the container. Center, align content, might be align items. Let's try it out. Align content, align items, save. Oh, there you go, align items. That's what we wanted. Okay, and see that centers that column. That's pretty nice. Okay, so again, basically justify content always lines things up the direction of the Flexbox, and then align items you can use for the other direction. So in this case, when I have it in column mode, this basically spaces out the column, and this spaces out horizontally. When this was not a column, so if I were to get rid of this, it defaults to row, then this is how it spaces out horizontally, and this is how it spaces out vertically. Okay. Cool. Now, what if there's like lots of blocks? Like let's go back to our HTML and let's copy these divs over and over again. Okay, although that should probably cause a problem. Oh, that worked fine for now. Okay. So what's going on here? So notice that I put in a fixed height and width on these blocks, yet it still squishes them. The reason is, by default, Flexbox puts everything on one row. So in this case, when there's no more space left, it just squeezes them in. What if I don't want that to happen? I want them to wrap onto another row. Okay, then I would go back to my CSS, and we can add a property called Flexwrap. And then we'll just call this wrap. Okay, save. Okay, and then they wrap. Okay, now why did it quite do that, let's go in the inspector. So it wrapped, but it made those look really long. I think it's because there's probably two divs stacked on top of each other. But I just want to confirm that. Yeah, okay, so it's not that they're long, it's just there's just two copies. Okay, so how do we fix that? We want to make that a little bit clearer. In that case, I'm going to go back to my 1, 2, and 3, and I want to make sure there's some margin between them. Make sure there's space between each block. So I'll put some margin on the block, so that way the blocks don't touch each other. And there we go, that looks a lot better. Okay, so you can do some cool stuff with FlexBox. And the thing is that you can put another FlexBox inside the FlexBox. Okay, so I could do a column in the block, and then put content in there, and whatever you want, but it just makes it really easy. And usually when I'm using FlexBox, the way I think about it is I think of everything sort of in rows. So I think of a row, basically what you do is you look at a website and you think of what are my different sort of rows. And sometimes you'll see a section that looks like it wraps. That's a row. It's just a row that wraps. So like navigation would be one row, a hero image would be one row. So if I were to go to, let's see here, let's find like a website. Like let's go to Amazon.com. Not necessarily like this most aesthetically pretty website, but okay. So if I'm looking at this, I mean that's a background image. This is actually probably two rows. So this is like, so you see this header block has probably a flex box with two columns, with a column in it, which is, this is one block, and then this is another block, and then inside that is another flex box that's a row, lining up all the links and all this content here. So there's actually probably a lot of flex box going on right here, just in this navigation bar. Okay, like this is a flex box. Okay, so this has like container. So basically this is the container, and then here's one block inside of it, here's another block inside of it, here's another block inside of it, then here's another block that has two smaller blocks inside of it. This is a flex box with some other stuff going on, but you guys get the idea. So every time I see a row, think, oh, flex box. Okay, here they just kind of have some other fancier stuff going on, but yeah. And then like this would be another flex box. So this footer, this is a flex box, one big container, and then with a bunch of little smaller containers, except they're not spaced around or spaced between, they're centered, so that way they're all kind of crunched up in the center with a little margin to give them some breathing room. Okay, the more you do this, the more you actually sit there and just try to rebuild these things. So it's fun looking at some of your favorite websites and just trying to rebuild them. The more you'll get like a feel for a lot of the CSS properties to kind of get the basic result. Okay, with that, that's sort of a FlexBox in a nutshell. I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Ciao.